cannabis audit. Ready to go?
Thank you, Jim. As you can see, there's a lot of things to consider, from the regulatory environment and where we are with making this fully legal federally, as well as developing an internal task force and a project lead to have conversations with the board and examiners, to developing your entire infrastructure, including a thoughtful process on selecting third-party service providers. So there's a lot that goes into this, and hopefully we've given you a little bit of a roadmap on how to achieve if you'd like to move forward. But now what I'd like to do is ask Jim, the expert, some questions from a risk professional perspective as a banker. So my question to you, Jim, first is, what are the impacts of the bank for not choosing to review, investigate, or entertain cannabis as a product line?
As with most product lines, in any product line, we have to look at the impact, both positive and negative, to the bank. So I think the very first thing we look at, because these are for-profit entities, and what is the impact of the shareholders if you don't review this? As this is considered to be one of the most material potential sources of revenue for the next 3 years, what is the event and CAMEL oversight if earnings are not properly taken into consideration by those individuals responsible for looking at new products and new product development? The cannabis product has evolved in the areas of reputation, risk, and acceptance, as we pointed out, including by regulators at state and federal levels. Is it appropriate to disregard serious review of a product that has such a potential deposit and NII, non-interest income source? What is your impact at that point to your CAMEL ratings on earnings? Without review, are you aware if you're actually servicing cannabis today? And if you are, and not reporting or gaining the revenue from that support. I will indicate that many individuals today who are cannabis companies are in fact lying to get their accounts. They're attempting to cloak the business under some other type of a business structure. If in fact you're servicing cannabis and can service it to those same individuals who would be banked otherwise, you could garner that revenue.
Thank you, Jim. So what I understand is, as we talked about, is performing the product risk assessment regardless of whether or not you decide to move forward. I think what I heard you say is to perform a cost-benefit analysis that includes everything from technology to staffing to how much we're going to price for these services. You know, what are all the services and how much is each one going to be priced? All of those should be taken into consideration, and then let the board and management determine if they're going to move forward. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. The product assessment, a balanced, properly educated product assessment, then allows the board to make that critical decision the board needs to make, as the board has the responsibility to the shareholders.
Thank you. My next question is, my BSA officer is opposed to offering this high-risk product line. What is your response to that contention?
Compliance and BSA have a duty to be risk adverse and risk conscious. That's the nature of the position. However, it is appropriate, while it is appropriate for them to take the position most adversarial to any product line that would increase risk to the bank, it is also appropriate, and notwithstanding their duty to be risk adverse and risk conscious, to look at the following. As indicated, it's the bank's board of directors' responsibility to make the final determination of weighted risk to the bank. They're the individuals who have the responsibility of the return on asset to the investor. So it is appropriate for the BSA and compliance officers to approach this from a perspective identifying the risks, acknowledging the risks, identifying if they're mitigatory in nature, and what the potential return on assets is. Multiple banks have chosen to proceed with this product line and the FDIC, Federal Reserve, and state banking regulators have aligned to support this with proper risk controls. The FDIC, Federal Reserve, and state banking regulators are not pushing back right now, provided that the banks are properly doing the high-risk structure of oversight. As discussed, the market share of beachhead of available clients with the passage of the Safe Banking Act will be absorbed by those prepared to provide services to these clients. As we discussed, it's likely that the Safe Banking Act will pass in the first or second quarter of 2021. The question to you would be, are you prepared to provide services to those clients, even if you choose not to provide them until the Safe Banking Act does pass? As professionals, the BSA and compliance officers know this, there's not a perfect product, but the solutions are now there, and given the proper systems, intellectual capital, and support, given the current regulatory climate and the earnings potential of the bank, those entities as professionals must balance this in the product review. My suggestion to the CEO is request the bank compliance team of professionals provide a full product review of SWOT and mitigating items for any potential risks for consideration, including the revenue potential.
Thank you. So basically, speak now or forever hold your peace. But definitely the BSA officer needs to bring their concerns to the table as part of the SWOT analysis or the risk assessment process. Okay. All right, one last question for you, Jim. We heard that the regulators are already providing a form of quote unquote safe harbor by not taking or engaging any adverse actions for banks involved in cannabis banking, provided that they're performing these services in alignment with current regulations. What have been your discussions and understanding with regulators in this regard?
Well, that's an excellent question. I've had the opportunity, the privilege, and honor of speaking to both federal and state regulators. And as mentioned at the inception of the program today, I actually was involved in the dissertation and study for banking engaged by the Secretary of Treasury for California. And that allowed me the opportunity to speak with both regulators at a state and federal level in regard to this. In recent periodicals, treatises, and interviews with state banking authorities where cannabis has been legalized, the overwhelming commentary has been supported of banking as it's critical to preventing AML issues. Many states have developed their own special guidance and regulations for banks involved and are not taking any action against banks provided they adhere to the state guidance that's established. States view this as a conundrum where a federal law is conflicting with state law. And to those interviewed, this has been a critical matter for the federal government to resolve. The federal regulators. In my discussions with the federal regulators, they're equally struggling with this task. They would just as soon see this be both regulated and banked because of the money laundering concern. Today, the FFIEC has no guidance as of this date. The Department of Justice has continued to support the FFIEC rule guidance pursuant to the Cole Memorandum. The Federal Reserve has indicated they will take no action against the banks at the Fed window for transactions relating to cannabis. Notwithstanding the previous, the work in cannabis must be in conformance with the existing state and federal guidance in place, including EDD, the FFIEC, and high-risk account guidance. The FDIC has indicated in various regions whose publications are supported by the Washington FDIC that no action will be taken by the FDIC directly unless, first, the manner of cannabis handling by the bank is contrary to high-risk services, including EDD, and second, is not in conformance with the specific state banking rules following state adoption of those rules. The FDIC has stated they will generally defer to the state banking authorities in this product and have a more focused risk review from an insurance perspective to the Federal Deposit Insurance. So general comments would be, first, capital for high-risk products needs to be a consideration that will be looked at. So that's a very important issue. If there's low capital in the bank, it will be a struggle based on my discussions with the regulators, both state and federal. The second issue is, do you have the appropriate intellectual capital and the appropriate systems to track the structures outlined in the presentation? It is not scalable to do this manually, and the regulators have been quite clear about that. In addition to that, can you provide the needed red flag reporting to match the various requirements for EDD and for monitoring of the transaction base? Internal to the bank, do you have the appropriate staffing based on an intellectual structure, as Radhika pointed out? And additional to that, do you have the proper supporting auditing group to come in and actually look at and work with you on your BSA audit, the changes or items on your enterprise-wide risk assessment? That group can help assure that the proper items are in place for auditing. And did you obtain regulatory approval? And did you obtain insurance approval of the new product? As Radhika pointed out earlier, in the insurance provisions, if you look to the insurance policies, most will have a prohibition against knowingly involved in a federally illegal product. If you actually talk to the insurance brokers, most will give you a waiver to that, but they will not waiver it in a post structure on an insurance claim.
Thank you. And I think it's safe to assume that obviously your safety and soundness rating is considered in this, as well as how you've performed in BSA audits in the past, correct?
Absolutely correct.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jim. And we absolutely applaud the people that have participated in our session today for thinking about this, for looking into how to put together a program in place. It's important that you start thinking about all of these things now, as we've pointed out. After this recording is done, Jim and I are available to answer questions. I believe that they will open up the conference lines to ask us some questions, so we are here to answer anything you may have. If we can't get to all the questions today, this is our contact information. We both provide services to this area, this product line, and this industry. So this is my email and my mobile number, as well as Jim's email and contact information. We again thank you for your time today, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.